Welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 53 of Brainstorium. Here I am once more, hoping to spark your imagination and possibly make you chuckle a few times with the bizarre writing prompt game of Exquisite Corpse. What weirdness and wonder will emerge from the socks of destiny today? But before we begin, I have some curious and inventive ideas from listeners who brainstormed a phrase from the last show. It is time to follow the white rabbit of your imagination. So last time, the random word combination I chose for inviting feedback on was the boisterous rocking chair. The best ideas, and yes, I had to be selective as I received quite a few, were from T.F. Burke, Nick Vracar and Ev Days. T.F. Burke suggested a timeline told by the rocking chair, remembering all the people that sat in it, comforting colicky babies, nervously waiting for a person's fever to break, waiting and staring out of the window for someone to come back from war, the many different rooms and houses in which it was once set up. I asked Travis, how would these ideas emerge? Would there be a voice, or is this done through imagery? And he said his idea was of ghostly images that appear in the room at night, recreating the scenes. The chair should be antique too, and had many families who owned it. Brilliant ideas there. I can just see these bizarre scenes emerging as ghostly images. Nick Vracar said, "At the senior living centre, Bartholomew always sits on the one good rocking chair. Only he's allowed because he has lived the best life and makes sure everyone knows it. That is, until he passes. Who will inherit the chair? Which remaining elder can prove their life worthy?" After reading this, I had to ask Nick, what kind of powers could the chair have to be the source of so much envy? And he said, maybe it would offer clarity of memory to the person sitting in it, allowing them to see all their triumphs and regrets perfectly, and what the previous occupant boasted to distract themselves from their failures. Interesting ideas there. I really like that. Very different. Ev Days said, "The boisterous rocking chair set in the year 2052. Midnight at the exclusive Bel Air Presbyterian home. All residents are asleep. The furniture comes to life and begins discussing the day's antics. As per usual, the rocking chairs of Chris Rock and Will Ferrell vie for the mic. Love it. Chairs competing for the best story told." That's just great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your story ideas. This is fast becoming my favourite part of the show, to hear what other people's ideas are. Right, I think it's time to bring forth the socks of destiny. And for those who haven't listened before or can't remember because it's a bit strange and complicated. Exquisite Corpse mixes your words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. And I use these as writing prompts because why not? So the first sock for describing words, the first word is from Mariah. Unedited. I'm just wondering what besides a book or an essay or a story could be unedited. Right, the noun sock. This is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Oceanographer. An unedited oceanographer. I'm not gonna judge, not gonna think about it until I've got the complete Exquisite Corpse. So let's grab an action. This is from Mariah again. Said boo to. That is an unusual action. Let's just see what the describing word sock brings us. This is from Paul Benfield. Voluminous. Well, there's a large way of saying large, isn't there? Final word, and then I'll look at the entire Exquisite Corpse and see what we can come up with. So, final word is from social media ID Go Rhyming. Pixie. A voluminous pixie, of course. Some kind of oxymoron, that is. A tiny thing that is also somehow huge. Okay, so the entire Exquisite Corpse is the unedited oceanographer said boo to the voluminous pixie. Okay. Well, I'm just going to look at different parts of it first. So what initially interests me is how a person could be said to be unedited. I quite like it. It's very strange. It makes me think of someone who's decided to say exactly what they think and not hold back their opinions or attitude for the sake of being polite. No filter. But here, an oceanographer is saying boo. And that's what she might otherwise keep inside and has decided to let out. So the unedited oceanographer said boo to the voluminous pixie. Okay, I'm getting a couple of ideas here. And you know I've used the pause button because that's just how I roll. The unedited oceanographer could also refer to a book or an academic publication that she's drafted but is keeping secret, i.e. there's no one to edit it. Or she's just not interested in editorial feedback. A voluminous pixie. I mean, it's got to be an underwater pixie if an oceanographer is interested in it. And the saying boo could be the oceanographer sneaking up on the creature. That moment when she takes a photograph of an extremely rare creature that could end up in her book on deep sea creatures. That could be why it's unedited at this stage. She's worried about how this book will be received. People will claim that she's made it all up and generated these bizarre images using AI. An underwater pixie, though, what would that be like? I imagine glistening blue scales that wink back the light, shimmering. The way the sunlight streaks through the water, undulating against its shiny scales, like sparks running up and down the creature, confusing predators and oceanographers. Would its wings double as fins? Quick as a hummingbird, it zips behind a bank of coral at the first sight of a human. If it can live on land as well, why does it choose the water? Is that something to do with climate change, the warming of the world's oceans? But then, what about pollution? And plastic? Wouldn't that put it off from being in the water? And annoying oceanographers poking their noses and their cameras in where they're not welcome. I do love the idea of inventing new types of creatures for a story. There are so many creature fans out there who might not even consider themselves to be creature fans, but enjoy stories about werewolves, vampires, fairies, scary fairies most likely, and wizards. Even dinosaur movies tap into our curiosity about otherness, strangeness, and the mystery and wonder that we feel when we imagine or see beings who are so different from ourselves. And then the tension of the story can come from the clash between this otherworldly creature, its different ways of thinking and behaving, and its appetites, and our so-called real world, and our expectations of what's normal. What if the oceanographer is foolish enough to take on the voluminous pixie when she does not know its true strength or its powers? A rich source of story ideas can come from just making up creatures and imagining what they're like, what they eat, who they eat, where they're from. But you don't necessarily need to make up the weird combinations yourself. The game of Exquisite Corpse can generate the combination for you at random, and you can use this as a writing challenge to see where this takes you. On that note, I think it's time for another Exquisite Corpse. Okay, so our first describing word is from Alessandro Bozzo, tenacious. Okay, let's try for a noun. This is from Honor Harlow, banshee. Ooh, there you have it. A tenacious banshee. I like it. But what kind of action do we have? This is from social media ID Wade B. Ward. Stole clothing from. That's interesting. Let's try for another describing word. This is from Robin the Mail Lady. Foggy. Okay. Finally, if I can get my hand out of the sock, this is from Mariah. Box. Ooh, we have a foggy box. That's interesting. So let's see the entire Exquisite Corpse. I'll read the entire thing out. So, the tenacious banshee stole clothing from the foggy box. Ooh. Okay. Actually, I think it's time to pour my green tea. It's been brewing a little while, so give that a bit of a stir. Right. Okay. Now I expect to be inspired. So just in case some listeners might not know what a banshee is, it's from Irish folklore, a female spirit that screams or wails when a death is soon to happen. A tenacious banshee? Even worse. But why would she need to steal clothing? If she's trying to enter the human world more completely, or just during the daytime, assuming that she can usually only slip through the veil at night, I imagine a simple sort of practical magic involved in donning human clothes that lets you in fully, like a real disguise that gives you a literal camouflage, a predator among its prey. Then again, if banshees are supposed to be frightening because they herald a death, does that make them predators, or are they just messengers? Unwilling messengers, possibly. This alone could be the basis for a story if you were to have a reluctant banshee. Is that the reason why she's tenacious in some way? Ooh, things to think about there. The foggy box. I love this word combination because there are so many different possibilities. Why is the box foggy? Does it contain clouds? Or is the box made from clouds or some other foggy substance that only certain supernatural beings can see and touch, so it's foggy to us but not to them? What might it contain then? Or is the box foggy because it's difficult to see if it's floating in a foggy Victorian street full of smog? That makes me imagine a jewellery box or a kind of decorative gilded box for a brooch, something valuable, beautiful and secret. But the idea that it's possible to pull clothes from this box leads me up a different avenue. So the tenacious banshee stole clothing from the foggy box. And I think of a large trunk, a bit battered round the edges from travelling, with a rickety handle. Some of the leather stitches have come undone. In that case, is the fog actually steam from a steam train? I see a traveller, their uncertain features buried under the shadow of a low hood, hunched in their seat. The trunk sits heavily on the overhead rack opposite, utterly still despite the jerk of the train. The whistle screams and the train starts to move. But maybe I find myself more drawn to the first idea because it's so odd, the idea of a tiny trinket-style box hovering in the fog of a dark Victorian street, a secret no one can see except the banshee that haunts that road. In the chill evening air, humans tramp past, their heads down after a long day's work. Unseen and drawn by another unseen thing, only the banshee notices the glint in the smog. She floats closer, her rags trailing. As her hand reaches around the box, clasping its solidity, she too becomes solid. Her feet, usually sweeping a few inches off the ground, gently lower to the pavement and come to rest on the cobblestones. She grins. The box's magic lends physicality to the spirits who touch it. And what of this tenacious banshee? The clothing she steals from the box, it might be the cloth that protects the box, a protective drawstring bag, a part of what keeps it secret and draws it into the fog so that no other eyes can perceive it. What does it contain? The heart of a scream, the death that awaits, the sound that will pierce the fog and all the weather-worn souls that hear it groaning and rolling over in their sleep. Tonight, like every night, she must pluck her own scream from a box, having forgotten what happened the night before, what happened every night ever since she became a banshee. For this is the way the dark magic must work. It is hidden in a box, to be unleashed on the unsuspecting. Like death, it can never truly be anticipated until it's too late. Whoa, this has become rather dark. I think it's time to see what else the Socks of Destiny hold in store. Something a bit lighter, perhaps? Okay, our first word is from Mariah. Angry. Okay, let's try for a noun. This is from Lee. Sicilian. Okay, I'm not even sure that I've pronounced that correctly, but I made a note because I had to look it up. It is a burrowing worm-like amphibian with poor vision and no limbs, very much like a worm. Oh, God. Okay, let's I'm just going to keep going and then we will reflect on what that might mean. So from the action sock, a word from me, or a phrase from me. Hid in the cupboard from. Okay. So our next word, another describing word, is from Anonymous. Sensual. Oh, I'm always dreading what is going to be the last word. This is going to be a challenge. Oh gosh. Okay, so the final noun is from Fraser Armitage. Cheese sauce. Okay, deep breaths. I'm just going to read the whole thing. The angry Sicilian, or worm-like amphibian, hid in the cupboard from the sensual cheese sauce. Of course it did. Well, my first thoughts are, we can never promise to take every part of an exquisite corpse literally, because then all of the stories we write from them would be full-on bizarro fiction, which is fine if you want to write bizarro fiction, but my groove is fantasy, usually contemporary fantasy, or where magic intrudes upon our everyday life. I feel like cheese sauce has taken me into a restaurant setting, and I'm just going to dive in to the scene, not to the sauce. Again, not everything is to be taken literally on this show, for good reason. Horace stirred the spaghetti. Actually, his name was John Horace, but he'd given up trying to correct his colleagues. Matt and snobby Susanna were busy chopping vegetables and hacking up a hide of beef. In the hot kitchen, background music blasted, a bouncing beat the manager was convinced kept everyone working at speed. Other chefs and assistants chatted and clanked saucepans as they worked. So many layers of noise. This was where Horace hid his true self. All the comments he might have made, could so easily make, if he dared speak his mind, about his self-satisfied teammates, under a blanket of sound. Matt and Susanna laughed at some private joke, making Horace grimace. Soon they would hide under a blanket of pure chaos. The packet of powder sat in Horace's pocket. He didn't know what it contained exactly, but he knew he wanted to use it. His gift, his weapon? The worm, the others called him behind his back. Putting him on spaghetti duty was their form of a joke. It was because of his long, stringy arms and pink, blotchy skin he knew it. But the hot, humid atmosphere of an Italian restaurant kitchen didn't do his rosacea any favours, and he couldn't help being tall and skinny. Perhaps he also couldn't help what was about to happen with the packet of powder. 10 minutes later, Horace hid in the utensils cupboard while a thick, oozing lava of cheese sauce swelled through the kitchen, waist high. A yellow, steaming gloop swallowing worktops in slow motion as it carried ladles and broken plates with a steady, faceless determination. Muffled screams from the restaurant escaped like air squeezed from a balloon. Horace clamped his hands over his mouth. It wasn't meant to do this. I'll stop there because I've reached the point where I need more information to be able to continue. I need to make decisions based on questions that are emerging in my mind, which is a natural stage in the story writing process if you're using a discovery method like I do. I think the main question is, what was Horace's intention? What did he believe the mysterious powder would do, and what was his plan? Plans that go wrong are always a good trope. In fact, I've read in books about creative writing that if the protagonist makes a plan to do anything, it must go wrong, at least in part. Preferably, it should make their situation even worse. We need the unexpected, and we can't resist another obstacle, even if the grand plan to solve everything is what we as readers also kind of really want, to tie up the story and make the protagonist's life better again. But no, it cannot be. There must be a mess, which may or may not involve cheese sauce. As a discovery writer, my preferred method of discovering what the magical powder is and what Horace really wants to do with it would be to ask myself a few questions. Mainly, who is Horace and what does he want? And to explore a possible way in which he finds or is given this magic powder by simply trying to write this as a scene, as an experiment. The process of writing helps me to get closer to a sense of who the character is, because I can watch and listen to the way that he moves and speaks as I make it up, and wonder what he's thinking, because of course plot and character go hand in hand, and one will suggest and feed into the other. When I ask myself how he gets hold of this magic powder, I immediately think of a strange encounter at a fairground. A tarot card reader? Or is that too obvious? I want the place he goes to have a strangeness about it, so that it's part of this world, but at the same time, he at least has to go through a spangly curtain to get to it, so there's an otherworldly feel to it. But whoever gives him the powder, and wherever this happens, I wonder if Horace makes a wish for abundance, because the powder certainly gives him that. Yes, a packet of pure abundance. I imagine he wanted to mix it with some money, somehow deposit into his bank account, but then it slips into his cheese sauce at work by accident. And his other wish, his unconscious but very strong desire to get back at his workmates. This also feeds into the intention imbued into the cheese sauce, with plenty of abundance, of course. Okay, I mean, it still surprises me how sometimes the hardest, most ridiculous Exquisite Corpse becomes the ripest inspiration for a story. Maybe because they make you work that bit harder to find the solution. You push through the challenge, and that pushes you into new story territory. It's all been a bit strange today, from a voluminous pixie fending off an oceanographer to a tenacious, curious banshee unleashing her scream, to a spill of cheese sauce with volcanic proportions. But which word combination will I invite you to play with today? I think my favourite has to be the foggy box. It's so unobvious. There must be so many different interpretations possible, and that's what I want to hear. Your unique interpretation. It doesn't have to be long, just a couple of sentences to suggest an idea. So if you're feeling creative, drop me a line at annatizard.com. Just click on the contact button at the bottom of the page and tell me all about it. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's brainstorium. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.